There's my problem.
These are books.
This is our favorite.
But footnotes about
Compare and contrast. Now, to be honest, this covers both novels, but nevertheless, there's 300 plus pages of page-by-page commentaries to the Golden Calf alone, and this is the 3rd edition. So, yes, we did a lot of research.
There's so much, it seems, that you could do to include, and I wonder how you sort of work back and forth from the text to the commentaries, and you could almost get overwhelmed thinking about the things that you might be leaving out or not including, or the shades of meaning you might not be including. How did you get along with that?
Well, we left the previous translations aside, and we only referred to them when we were absolutely desperate. But as a rule, we left them in another room and we didn't look at them. And the commentaries, we used Google probably more than anything to sort of follow up on, all those sort of little questions of, what is essence of pair, and what is this, and what is that. I don't know, what would you say?
Well, for one thing, I have a correction. We had a golden rule. We do not look at the previous translations until we came up with something of our own. There's a lot of new materials, and let me rephrase it. The commentaries had a lot of things that I didn't know, and I read it, I don't know, maybe 10 times, and started reading it in the 60s, late 60s. So every time we had to think, is this something that English speakers can relate to? Is it important, or maybe not that important? Say, there's a quote from Bunin, but I never knew it was a quote from Bunin. Obviously, hardly any English speaker would know that. Is it important to render it the way it appears in the translation of Bunin? Usually the answer was no. Well, there's a, I think in the very first chapter, the chairman of the city council asks the supposed sons of Lieutenant Schmidt, do you yourselves remember the uprising on battleship Ochaka? And there's a joke there, because Ochaka was a cruiser. And the chairman is clearly thinking about battleship Potemkin. The movie was already out there. So he doesn't remember history as much as he remembers the movies. But we thought, how many, forget Americans, forget English speakers, how many Russians would get that? Not many. So we just left it as is, without the explanation or anything. There are lots of jokes that native speakers don't see or don't get, or only partially get, or just don't notice, because you read much faster than you translate. So things that we thought were really important, we emphasized them, and things that we didn't, we just let them slide. Whoever wishes to catch them, let them catch them.
Will you talk a little bit about how you went about translating the book, the method that you used? Because Konstantin, you're a Russian native speaker, and Helen, you learned it later, so you come at it from different perspectives. I wonder how you kind of brought those together to make the translation.
Well, we started out trying to write like Petrovs, and we sat down each with a copy of the original together in front of the computer screen, and we quickly realized that that was very inefficient, that it was going to be very difficult, that there was just no point at all. We were arguing with each other within 5 minutes. And what we ended up finding worked was that Kostya would do a draft of a chapter or half a chapter, and then he would give it to me, and then I would sit and go over it. I'd have the original, I'd have my dictionaries, and I would kind of work through it and propose changes or whatnot, and then we'd get back together and argue it out, and we really did have quite a bit of discussion. I remember one time we actually settled something about English usage, because, you know, he would always say to me, well, you know, are you sure that's English? Are you sure that's not just some sort of Canadian thing from, you know, mid-century Toronto usage or something like that? So we listened for songs, you know, on the radio or things that we were reading and say, see, here, they're saying it here. There's that word that you said nobody uses that. So anyway, we go back and forth, and we probably went over every chapter 3 times, and then at the end, I read it aloud while Kostya was looking into the original, just to make sure that we hadn't missed any sentences or phrases or things like that. So,
which we of course did.
Which we found out, you know, but we found them all, right?
I would also add, when we just started out and when we worked together, what was happening was Helen was still trying to understand what the original said, and I already figured that out. I was trying to figure out the English translation, which was exactly the opposite of what we were supposed to do together. I was supposed to worry about interpreting the original, and Helen about writing in English. So it was actually doing it simultaneously was very inefficient and counterproductive.
I know we talked a little bit about when we were working on the book, how people were going to react to it, because this is such a popular and important book. And I don't think we ever talked about what people said. I mean, you sent this to friends who had read it in Russian and now could read your translation. What did they say about it? I know you were really concerned about it when we were working on it.
Well, the Russian attitudes towards the book are different. There are people who disagree with various aspects of the book. Not everybody loves it, everybody knows it, but it's not necessarily everybody loves it. But everybody I know read it, and everybody knew how difficult it was going to be. So that probably was the main motif about how difficult that translation is going to be.
Well, I guess the other thing is that the people who really like it have very strong ways, strong ideas about how they think any particular somebody's name, how someone's name should be translated, how something should be called. And so early on in the process, I talked to a friend of ours who absolutely loves the book, and I suggested, well, I think we're thinking about doing this. And she said, oh, no, you can't possibly do that. You've got to do it this way because of so on and so forth. And I think you talked to Yuran, and he had, you had a similar experience with him. So we decided just not to talk to anybody about it. We went our way.
Yeah, because it's so well known, everybody had an opinion.
Yeah.
And we were getting confused by other people's opinions.
Right.
What elements of the novel sort of endure, the satirical elements? Which ones of them still sort of apply to modern Russia, as far as you know?
A couple of months ago, Prime Minister Putin gave a speech on the shoddy work of various government offices that are supposed to serve the public.